What does your crazy neighbor do to be labeled the crazy neighbor? She dug up my fancy flowers and replanted them in her own yard, 15 feet away. Had a neighbor who wouldn't let anyone use his driveway because he didn't want it to get dirty. Anyone, including himself. He parked on the street outside. If he thought you were having a party, he would drag a bunch of plastic bags full of God knows what to the end of his driveway so no one could turn around it. One time I came home, and he was outside hosing it down in the rain. To his credit, I've never seen a cleaner driveway. Used to live in a little town of 300 people where we had an elderly neighbor named Gladys. She would routinely look near our garbage can outside and take the recyclable bottles and cans we would leave for her. After we cleaned out a fish tank, we put the gravel and fake plants in a bag and left it on top of the garbage can because it was already full. About a week later, Gladys hollered at me while I was outside to come over as she wanted to show me something. She had taken that bag we had left and planted the fake plants along the side of her house. She said she wasn't real confident that they would make it, but so far they seemed to be thriving. I could only nod and compliment her on her green thumb. My neighbor sits in his yard, hides behind his plants and meows at people who pass by. He is not dangerous at all, but he is not right in the head either. His caretakers are his parents, and they seem to be very nice people. His dad once told me he just likes to be a cat and left it at that. I didn't ask any more questions. I would also like to be a cat, so I see no issue with this. She has a penchant for going around sticking nails in people's tires at night. This has happened dozens of times to nearly everyone on the street, though she's slowed down since more people started installing video cams and motion sensor lights in their driveways. Years ago we had a guy in our neighborhood like this. He stopped hitting our house when my crazy butt mother came flying out the house around 3 a.m. with her baseball bat. Fighting fire with fire. And by fire I mean crazy. And by fire I also mean crazy. He eats my flowers. In his defense, he told us that he has been doing it for years when he introduced himself after we bought the house. He also brought over frozen cookies in a plastic bag, as a housewarming gift, but wasn't sure what was in them. We share a side yard, and as he was talking to us, I noticed his all-brick house was actually roofing shingles, layered to look like brick. It started to register that he may be a little out there. He's a great neighbor. Just an older, eccentric stoner who keeps to himself and eats my flowers. No shame. Comes over to my yard, and eats my lilies raw, or brings scissors and clips the heads to boil and make jam. It's crazy to me, but we have embraced it. I planted a couple raspberry, blackberry, and blueberry bushes 3 years ago, when we first moved in, on the side yard we share. As well as a few knockout rose bushes. I told him to help himself to berries/roses anytime, especially before the birds do. The bushes have all gone insane, and the entire side of my house is now a yearly buffet for my neighbor. Having a decent relationship with a crazy guy I share a property line with is worth some dead-headed flowers. We had one a while back that had a meth lab in the home. Crazy fights, yelling at all hours of the night. Dude would wander around the hood tweaked out crazy, and once he threw a Molotov cocktail out of the second floor window at another dude who was smashing up his car, screaming, "I'll effing kill you, mother effer." Those were interesting times. Pulled us over pretending to be a police officer, saying that we had somehow broken the law whilst pulling out of our driveway and that she was going to call it in. She isn't a cop, laughing out loud. Edit. I considered using my dash cam video to actually call it in, but we had just moved in and I wasn't sure if she was the type of crazy to burn the house down or poison my dog. After chatting with the other neighbors, it turns out she's just the wannabe homeowners association president in a neighborhood with no homeowners association. So, mostly harmless. Just very annoying. Pretty sure that's a crime. Not only a crime, but a crime that really pisses off police officers. They'll arrest people on the spot for this kind of crap. Well, I used to have a neighbor who was legitimately mentally ill, although I don't know his actual diagnosis. His truck wouldn't start one day, dead battery, and he told everyone on the street that another neighbor was stealing the electricity. He knew this because of the way this guy parked his vehicle. Obviously it was sucking electricity from the ground for his battery, which drained the car batteries near him. Many times he would run down the street and warn everyone to hide their valuables because Japan was invading the country. He wasn't on drugs, but he did take medication for his mental illness, and everyone on our street could tell when he stopped taking it. Whenever he would start saying completely irrational things, we would remind him to take his medication, and he would thank us and go home, presumably to take it. He lived alone, and he was getting older, so I think he had a hard time remembering to take it. There were many, many more incidents. ETA, thanks for the rewards. I've never gotten any before this post. He jumped in front of my car while I was driving down the road to yell at me for going through his trash at night. Told him it was probably raccoons. He refuses to believe it to this day. Edit, I can't believe this comment blew up. It's crazy to think about. Thank you all for the awards. A lot of you are asking if I did it. I didn't. How do we know you aren't a raccoon? A quick look at your name tells me you got it from the trash. How do you explain that, He ain't one of ours, I can tell you that. Edit, thank you so much guys. Y'all have made my year. I used to live in a homeowners association. One of the members on the board lived across the street from my neighbor and I. He sent a letter to us saying that we all have to mow the lawn on the same day, at the same cut height, and in the same pattern to create uniformity in the neighborhood. My neighbor and I intentionally cut on different days and in opposite patterns just to annoy the guy. Took my parents to court because he lost in our homeowners association chairman election. Some people just have too much free time. Edit, he actually demanded we pay his legal fees after he lost in court. Twice. Next door lady standing on her driveway yelling at me because acorns have fallen from a large oak tree on my property onto said driveway, demanding that I cause the tree to cease and desist from this intentional criminal activity. Fun fact from a law student, trees do not in fact have the legal capacity required for intent. Thank God you're a law student. I was stumped. My sister's neighbor reported my sister to the police because her kids were playing in my sister's garden. Not for the usual reasons, too much noise etc. Nope, because a volcano in Italy had erupted and the radiation would hurt them. My sister lives in the UK. Laughing my butt off, I would have loved to see the police's face when they heard the reason. This older lady lives across the street from me, and she is obsessed with leaves falling on her lawn. To the point that she will come out of her house and pick up one individual leaf off the grass in the fall, or any other time. She spends hours a day outside with the leaf blower in fall. She will go and knock on other neighbors' doors if she thinks you have too many leaves on your grass. She'll come over into your yard and do it yourself herself if you're not home. What I think is weird is that she's in her 70s, no kids or grandkids living with her, and lives alone in a pretty large 4-bedroom house with an amazing in-ground pool in the backyard, with a slide and diving board and everything. Nobody has used that pool in at least 5 years, yet she opens it up every summer. Somehow she likes my family and has never once yelled at us about our leaves, and randomly brings things over like half-eaten gallons of ice cream and asks if we want it because she's not using it. Sounds like she's lonely/bored. The old lady who lived below me left me multiple cryptic letters blaming me for the birds chirping too loudly in the mornings. Not pet birds. The sparrows and crap outside. This went on for months. Edit, I'm flattered by the upvotes and awards. Thank you. To answer the most commonly asked question, yes, for a brief period I had a bird feeder. I took it down after a few months after multiple cryptic letters. Eventually management got involved and took her side even though bird feeders were explicitly allowed per the lease. There were several trees nearby, including one that literally hung onto both her and my balconies. I assure you that birds existed before I set up the feeder, as they continued to exist after. My sister and brother-in-law took over the lease 4 years ago, and they still get the occasional note from Bird Lady. Apartment management has even inspected their unit to verify there's no bird feeder or any other bird luring devices. Smiley face. Edit 2. I found one of the notes. Again, your bird dodo is on my railings, bird seeds on my porch and chairs, And your birds are ruining my night rest, wee hours of the morning, birds in your feet are chirping. Bird feeder was gone at this point. When I first moved in, my neighbor walked into the house, unannounced. When my wife gets home, sometimes she wants to stay in her car having a phone conversation. He will come out and walk down the side of his house, checking his sprinkler controls, and looks at my wife. He has the two huge bushes he refuses to cut. It blocks our view of backing out of our driveway. The fire department came by to clear trees and bushes around the fire hydrants. The neighbor came out and yelled at the fireman. "This bush is older than you." Needless to say, I hope there are no house fires. We bought a house, and on the day while we were unloading the first truckload, the neighbor came into our garage uninvited and started telling us what trees on our property he wanted us to cut down. Not the craziest, but the effing audacity of some people. Had severe anger issues and yelled at anything or anyone he didn't like on the street. A few years ago he had a road rage incident, and when he started banging on the other car's windows, the occupants got out and beat him badly. During this he had a heart attack and now barely has enough mobility to walk to the mailbox and back. Also, he doesn't yell anymore. If you are not ready for face punches, you are not ready to punch faces. My neighbor was an 85-year-old widow that lived alone. She had two vehicles, a car and truck, and over the course of a few months I realized that she was no longer parking her car in her garage like she had for the many years prior to that. Then suddenly the truck wasn't being parked inside the garage either. Turns out she no longer had room in her garage to park her vehicles because she was walking down to a residential construction site about a block away every evening, and she'd grab two 2x4s and bring them home. She had over 500 boards stacked in her garage, and when she was questioned on what she was going to do with it, she didn't have an answer. Edit. Bonus crazy neighbor stories. I drove 16 hours straight, pulled in my drive, and crashed on my couch immediately. Must have left the garage door open because I woke up to the neighbor lady shaking me to see if they missed my newspaper delivery that morning also. Neighbor lady thought I didn't clean up after my dog in her front yard. I had never owned a dog, so she retaliated by walking around the neighborhood with a garbage bag, picking up every bit of dog poo she could find, and dumped said bag of dog poo on my front lawn while I was standing in the front window watching. Ran up over $300 on 1 month's water bill of mine because neighbor lady was hooking her sprinkler up to my water when I'd leave for work in the morning and would let it run all day until right before I got home from work. She would put up an ugly orange snow fence between our yards in the fall to keep my leaves out of her yard. Me pointing out that I only had pine trees did not dissuade her from the decision to leave the snow fence up. Edit number 2. Day 1. I should have known something was fishy with this lady. Literally, day 1. I closed on my house at 9 a.m. and had a roofing company at the house waiting for the call that I closed. We spent the day ripping off the old layers and getting bundles up on the roof for the next day. It was hot out, we were exhausted and all sitting in the front yard cooling off when neighbor lady walked out of her house, down the sidewalk to my house, and without even acknowledging the 6 of us staring at her, she walked in the front door and had herself a look-see. She hated dandelions. I found this out the first year that I lived there when I noticed that my lawn was dying off in an extremely weird way, almost as if someone was spraying weed killer on the stream setting trying to snipe dandelions from 20 feet away. That's literally what she was doing. Being the nice guy I am, I would clean her driveway off in the winter because I had a snowblower. She would never thank me in person, but instead, she'd come over to my house after I had finished and would leave a bag on my front door that usually contained whatever expired goods she had in her pantry. Some of the standouts for me was like a dozen cans of 10-year expired Chef Boyardee, SP, stuff, and once, a half a bag of wheat flour. She knew lumber prices were going to be crazy in 2021. Called the police on people parked perfectly legal in front of their house, took pictures of my partner's dad just working in the yard, disappeared suddenly without a trace and then suddenly come back home in the dead of night 8 months later. Weirdos. That sounds a lot like jail. Quite possibly for stalking. We used to live next to a woman that would have a disco party for her cats in her backyard at 2 a.m. every few days. She would put up a disco ball and party lights with music playing. It was a little bit odd, but what made it crazy was her dancing like a Native American performing a ritual around the disco ball. It's honestly one of the strangest things I've ever witnessed. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.